The world just lost one of its greatest musical visionaries. Brian Wilson, the man behind the Beach Boys' timeless harmonies and some of the most influential songs ever written, has passed away at 82. His genius not only reshaped the sound of an era, but left a legacy that will echo through generations to come. But what made him so special? Why did his music change everything? On June 11, 2025, Brian Wilson's family made the heartbreaking announcement. The co-founder of the Beach Boys had passed away. A statement shared on Instagram read, "We are heartbroken to announce that our beloved father, Brian Wilson, has passed away. We are at a loss for words right now. Please respect our privacy as we grieve, but we realize that we are sharing our grief with the world." The tribute was short, simple, and raw, but it spoke volumes. Although the cause of death has yet to be revealed, it's been known that Wilson had been battling dementia in recent years and had been placed under conservatorship after Melinda, his wife of nearly 3 decades, passed away in early 2024. But before we dive into the details of his final years, let's take a look at the extraordinary life of the man who became a musical icon, a misunderstood genius, and a symbol of the complexities of fame and artistry. Brian Wilson wasn't just a musician. He was a revolutionary force in the music industry. He didn't follow the rules, he rewrote them. Wilson's songwriting and production skills turned the Beach Boys into one of the most iconic and influential bands of all time. But his influence stretches far beyond that. He was the mind behind hits like Good Vibrations and God Only Knows, songs that are as relevant today as they were when they first hit the charts. Consider this. Many of the world's biggest stars, from Mick Fleetwood to Ringo Starr, and from Paul Stanley to Gene Simmons, took to social media to pay tribute to Wilson's brilliance. They didn't just recognize him as a legendary figure, they understood that his genius shaped the very foundation of modern pop and rock music. Mick Fleetwood captured the sentiment perfectly when he wrote, "Anyone with a musical bone in their body must be grateful for Brian Wilson's genius magical touch, and greatly saddened by this major worldly loss." Brian didn't just write catchy tunes, he crafted musical landscapes. His work on Pet Sounds, widely considered one of the greatest albums ever made, set a new standard for what pop music could achieve. The harmonies, the innovative arrangements, and the emotional depth he infused into every track were groundbreaking at the time. And even decades later, his music continues to inspire artists across genres. But it wasn't just his songs that left a mark. It was his ability to push the boundaries of what was possible in the studio. Brian was a pioneer in music production, creating sounds that no one had ever heard before, often using unconventional instruments and techniques. What set him apart wasn't just his ability to craft perfect pop songs. It was his relentless pursuit of perfection and innovation that made him a musical genius. And though Brian's contributions were sometimes overshadowed by his personal struggles, the truth is, he was the mastermind behind much of the Beach Boys' success. He may not have always been in the public eye, but his influence was felt in every note, every lyric, and every performance. The story of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys began in the early 1960s when a group of teenagers in Southern California formed a band that would forever change the face of popular music. But it wasn't just the harmonies or the catchy surf rock riffs that would define the Beach Boys. It was Brian Wilson's extraordinary vision. It all started in 1961 when Brian enlisted his brothers Dennis and Carl, along with their cousin Mike Love and schoolmate Al Jardine, to form a band initially called the Pendletones. But it wasn't long before they became known as the Beach Boys, a name that perfectly captured the spirit of California's surf culture. The group's debut single, Surfin', was an instant hit, and from there, the band skyrocketed to fame. But behind the success was Brian, the architect of their sound. At just 19 years old, Brian was already writing and producing much of the band's material. His ability to blend catchy melodies with complex harmonies set him apart from other pop songwriters of the time. But it was his love of innovation that truly set the stage for what was to come. As early as 1964, he began to step away from touring with the band, opting to stay in the studio and focus on pushing musical boundaries. This decision led to Pet Sounds, an album that would redefine what a pop record could be. Released in 1966, Pet Sounds wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a full artistic statement. Brian's meticulous attention to detail, his use of unconventional instruments like the theremin and bicycle bells, and his groundbreaking production techniques turned the album into an instant classic. Good Vibrations, one of the album's standout tracks, is considered one of the greatest pop songs ever written. The way the song built from delicate harmonies to a euphoric explosion of sound was unlike anything anyone had heard before. But even as the band's success grew, Brian's personal struggles were starting to take their toll. The pressure of creating new sounds, combined with his ongoing mental health issues, led him to retreat from the public eye. Despite this, his genius continued to shine through, influencing countless artists who followed in his footsteps. Brian Wilson wasn't just a member of the Beach Boys, he was the soul of the band. And without his vision, music history would look very different today. Behind Brian Wilson's brilliance was a man who faced intense personal battles, struggles that would shape not only his life, but the legacy he left behind. Despite being hailed as one of the greatest musical minds of his generation, Brian's journey was marred by depression, mental health challenges, and substance abuse, battles that, at times, threatened to overshadow his genius. Brian's personal struggles began early. The trauma of a difficult childhood, including the emotional abuse from his father, Murray Wilson, contributed to a deep-seated sense of insecurity and confusion. Brian once opened up about his childhood in a 1991 interview, revealing how he became deaf in one ear due to his father's abuse, a disability that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Childhood and adolescence were very sad times in my life. I always had to turn my head to hear things, trying to imagine where those voices were coming from. As the Beach Boys' popularity soared, so did the pressure on Brian. While his musical genius earned him acclaim, the demands of producing hit after hit began to take a toll. His breakdown in the mid-1960s marked the beginning of a painful period of retreat. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, Brian withdrew from both his band and the public eye, leading to 2 years of isolation in his home. He became obese, reclusive, and unable to produce music with the same ease he once did. During this time, Brian's drug use escalated and his mental health deteriorated further. His battle with substances was devastating, leading to a near-fatal overdose in 1982. His family, friends, and bandmates became increasingly worried. It was at this point that Brian's family intervened, pushing him to enter the care of celebrity therapist Eugene Landy in a controversial move that many saw as necessary but also incredibly damaging. Despite these dark years, Brian's talent never fully disappeared. In the mid-70s, after a brief comeback to produce The Beach Boys' Love You, Brian fell back into old habits. But his determination to continue making music kept him moving forward. Eventually, he began working on his solo career, and while his personal demons still lingered, his music began to reflect a deeper sense of emotional honesty. Songs like Love and Mercy from his solo album of the same name became anthems of redemption and recovery. It was through these struggles that Brian found new hope. In the 80s, he met Melinda Ledbetter, a car dealership worker who would become his greatest supporter. Melinda helped him through the most difficult times in his life, giving him emotional security and stability. As Brian once said, Melinda was more than my wife. She was my savior. She gave me the emotional security I needed to have a career. Through the highs and lows, one thing remained constant: Brian Wilson's genius. Despite his personal struggles, he never stopped creating music that would touch the hearts of millions. And though he often fought against his own mind, it was his music that allowed him to transcend those battles, making his personal story one of ultimate triumph. Brian Wilson's life wasn't just defined by his music, it was shaped by his relationships, the ups and downs of his personal life, and his role as a father. His journey through marriage and family brought both joy and hardship, and it's clear that his loved ones were at the center of his world. Brian's first marriage was to Marilyn Rovell, a member of the girl group the Rovell Sisters. The two met in the early 60s, and despite their age difference, he was 21 and she was just 16, they married in December 1964. Together, they had two daughters, Carney, born in 1968, and Wendy, born in 1969. While Marilyn stayed by his side through some of the most difficult years of his life, the strain of Brian's struggles with mental health and substance abuse took its toll on their marriage. After 15 years together, Brian filed for divorce in 1979. Though their marriage ended, the bond with his daughters remained, and over time, Brian was able to reconcile with Carney and Wendy after years of estrangement. Both daughters later followed in his father's musical footsteps, forming the pop group Wilson Phillips in the early 1990s. It was clear that Brian's legacy lived on through his children, both in his music and in their own artistic careers. But the most enduring relationship of Brian's later years was with Melinda Ledbetter. The two met in the 1980s at a car dealership where Melinda was working, and their connection was immediate. Melinda became Brian's emotional anchor, offering him the stability and love he had longed for. Brian once said in a tribute to her, "Melinda was more than my wife. She was my savior. She gave me the emotional security I needed to have a career. She encouraged me to make the music that was closest to my heart." Together, Brian and Melinda had a family of their own with 5 adopted children: Dakota Rose, Daria Rose, Delaney Rose, Dylan, and Dash. The couple's bond grew stronger over nearly 3 decades of marriage. But sadly, Melinda passed away in January 2024, leaving Brian devastated. In the wake of her death, Brian's family filed for a conservatorship to manage his affairs as he dealt with dementia and the emotional toll of his loss. Brian's relationship with his children was complex but deeply meaningful. Despite early struggles, his large family brought him immense pride. His daughters, especially Carney and Wendy, played an important role in his later years, not only as his children, but as part of his musical world. And as a grandfather to 6 grandchildren, Brian's legacy continued to live on in the next generation, ensuring that his influence would stretch far beyond his own lifetime. As the years passed, Brian Wilson's life took a quiet turn, filled with both reflection and struggle. After decades of turbulent highs and lows, both personally and professionally, his later years were marked by a mix of triumphs, painful losses, and moments of peace. Following Melinda's death in 2024, Brian's health began to decline significantly. His family filed for a conservatorship, a decision that would place Brian's longtime business manager, Leanne O'Hard, and his publicist, Gene Sievers, in charge of his healthcare and affairs. This move came after Brian was diagnosed with a major neurocognitive disorder, likely dementia. The conservatorship would grant them authority to make crucial medical decisions for him, ensuring his care during a difficult time. Though his mental health had been a challenge for years, the conservatorship was a bittersweet reminder of how far Brian had come and how much he had fought to stay active in music. Despite his health issues, Brian continued to work on his music and remain involved in the industry he helped shape. The music he left behind was a testament to a lifetime of passion, creativity, and perseverance. During these later years, Brian's contributions to the world were continually honored. In 2001, an all-star tribute concert featuring Elton John, Billy Joel, Ricky Martin, and others celebrated his remarkable career. It was a powerful reminder of just how much Brian's music had resonated with not only his peers, but a new generation of artists. And in 2007, Brian was honored with a Kennedy Center Honor, one of the highest awards in American culture, solidifying his status as a national treasure. But these accolades couldn't replace the personal void left by Melinda's passing. Throughout it all, Brian's love for music and his family remained unwavering. Though his physical presence began to fade, his musical legacy continued to inspire and impact the world. His daughters and grandchildren became an important part of his world as he fought through his health struggles, always with music as his anchor. Brian Wilson was a man who gave everything to his art. As he faced the challenges of old age, dementia, and grief, his music provided both a solace for him and for the millions of fans who had been touched by his timeless songs. But perhaps one of his greatest achievements was that even in his final years, Brian Wilson never stopped being the artist he had always been, the man who reshaped pop music and whose influence will live on forever. On June 11, 2025, the world said goodbye to Brian Wilson. His family shared the news of his passing with the world through a simple yet deeply emotional statement. "We are heartbroken to announce that our beloved father, Brian Wilson, has passed away. We are at a loss for words right now. Please respect our privacy as we grieve, but we realize that we are sharing our grief with the world." The news hit hard. For those who grew up with his music, who felt his melodies in their bones, and for the countless artists who were influenced by his groundbreaking sound, it was a major loss. But as the tributes began to pour in from all corners of the music world, it became clear just how profound an impact Brian Wilson had made. Mick Fleetwood, who had worked alongside Brian in the music industry for years, captured the collective grief with his heartfelt tribute. Anyone with a musical bone in their body must be grateful for Brian Wilson's genius, magical touch, and greatly saddened by this major worldly loss. Other legendary musicians like Gene Simmons, Ringo Starr, and Paul Stanley echoed these sentiments, mourning the loss of a man whose music had shaped the sound of an entire generation. Brian's music transcended genre, crossing borders and breaking barriers. As Metallica's James Hetfield said, "I think God Only Knows That song is like one of the best-written songs ever. Thank you, Brian, for that." His songs weren't just tunes. They were anthems of love, loss, hope, and human experience. They resonated with everyone from rock stars to regular fans, each person finding their own story in his melodies. John Cusack, who portrayed Brian in the 2014 biopic Love and Mercy, shared a poignant message. The maestro has passed. The man was an open heart with two legs, with an ear that heard the angels. Quite literally, love and mercy for you and yours tonight. R.I.P. Brian Wilson. These words perfectly encapsulate the complexity of Brian Wilson. He was a genius who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, yet through it all, he gave us the gift of music that will never be forgotten. In the wake of Brian's death, his music continues to resonate, and his legacy lives on. Fans worldwide, from every corner of the globe, will continue to cherish his songs and remember the man who was, for many, a musical messiah. As we reflect on his life and his impact, it's impossible to deny that Brian Wilson changed the landscape of popular music forever. His voice, his genius, and his passion for creation will live on in every note, every harmony, and every song that echoes through the world. Brian Wilson may be gone, but his music will never fade. As we look back on Brian Wilson's life, one thing is clear: his impact on music is nothing short of extraordinary. The songs he wrote, the albums he created, and the vision he had for what pop music could be changed everything. He wasn't just a member of the Beach Boys, he was the mastermind behind their sound, a genius whose influence stretched far beyond the 1960s. Brian's legacy isn't just about the iconic tracks like Good Vibrations or God Only Knows. It's about his ability to create music that connected with the soul.
His melodies, harmonies, and arrangements became the soundtrack to the lives of millions, and his influence can still be heard in the music of today. Artists from all genres, from rock to pop to experimental music, owe a debt of gratitude to Brian for pushing the boundaries of what music could achieve. But it wasn't just his sound that made Brian Wilson a legend. It was his relentless pursuit of perfection. Brian didn't settle for what was easy. He chased the impossible, always striving to create something that had never been heard before. This pursuit led him to craft Pet Sounds, a record that still stands as one of the greatest albums ever made. His willingness to experiment with studio techniques, to layer complex arrangements, and to explore new sounds was ahead of its time, and it still influences musicians today.
Though Brian faced immense personal struggles throughout his life, his ability to create through those challenges speaks to the depth of his genius. He was not just a product of his time, he was a man who shaped time itself. His music wasn't just something people listened to, it was something they felt. Even in his final years, as his health declined, Brian continued to create music and inspire the world. His story is a reminder that genius isn't just about success, it's about persistence. It's about facing overwhelming odds, battling personal demons, and still finding a way to make the world a better place through art. As we say goodbye to Brian Wilson, it's important to remember that his legacy is alive and well. Every time his music plays, every time a new artist cites him as an influence, Brian's spirit continues to thrive. His music is timeless, his genius eternal, and his place in the pantheon of greats is secured. Thank you, Brian, for the music, the memories, and the magic.
Brian Wilson's death is a loss that reverberates through the entire music world. And honestly, it feels like we've lost a part of the soul of modern music. But while we mourn his passing, we also celebrate the extraordinary life he lived and the timeless contributions he made to the art of music. The melodies that defined generations, the harmonies that brought joy to millions, and the genius that reshaped pop music, these are the things that will endure long after Brian Wilson is gone. He wasn't just a musician, he was a pioneer, an artist, and a visionary. Through every high and low, Brian stayed true to the music, always striving to create something beautiful, something that would resonate on a deeper level. His music was a soundtrack to the lives of so many, and it will continue to be for generations to come. As we reflect on his life, we realize that Brian Wilson's music isn't just for listening, it's for living. It's the kind of music that makes you think, feel, and dream. His genius will forever be a part of the world's cultural fabric, and as we say goodbye to him, we know that the echo of his music will never fade. So let's remember Brian not only for the songs he gave us, but for the way he made us feel. And as we listen to Good Vibrations, God Only Knows, and Wouldn't It Be Nice, we're reminded that music, just like life, is fleeting. But the legacy we leave behind can last forever. Rest in peace, Brian Wilson. Your music will never stop playing.